Welcome to R.S.V.P. Listen to the show at your own risk. We will be discussing all taboo subjects like religion, sex, violence, and even politics. You should be ready for controversy, disagreements, face-offs, and maybe some downright rumbles. Well, sit tight and get ready for this week's episode. And by the way, if you're squeamish about obscenities, don't listen to our fucking show! Hey everybody, this is Diane Daniels, and you are watching the R.S.V.P. show. We talk about controversial issues, all of them, mainly that have to do with religion, sex, violence, and politics, but we throw in a few wild cards here and there. And we want to talk about them because everyone should be able to express their opinions and not be judged and not be trashed upon just because they have an opinion. So we talk about all things here controversial. And today we're going to be talking about wild animals and being held in captivity in zoos and sanctuaries. We're going to talk about roadside shows and all other kinds of things. Let me introduce to you my beautiful, sultry, sexy co-host, coming to you from the East Coast of Australia, Miss Bernadette Desmond.
Was that your attempt at an Aussie accent there, love?
Listen, I could talk all night if you want me to about Australian. Don't get me going there.
Love, that does not sound like Australian. You sound like a cross between, I don't know, some kind of like pommy chicken. I don't know, I can't quite pick up the other accent, but anyway, bless you and your cotton socks. I'm excited to be here yet again. Honest to God, how quick does the week go? I can't believe that we talk. For those of you who don't know, Di and I talk every Tuesday while we're like debating what topics we're going to discuss. So honest to God, it goes so quickly from a Tuesday, and here we are on a Saturday again. Show number 9 today.
Friday here in the United States. Yes, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it goes
Friday
very quickly
for you, love.
Yeah, it goes quickly, I'm telling you. But we have a hell of a show today. So there's a lot going on, talking about wild animals with the release of The Tiger King on Netflix and Animals in Captivity. So we decided to take it head on. And as it turns out, Bernadette and I think differently about this. So this is going to be an interesting show. Surprise. So tune in because this could get heated, people. I don't know. As always, don't forget I love you, Bern.
I know. I love you too, love. I love you too. Right. And you know what? I guess that's what it's all about too, is that's what I love, that we can express our opinions. And even if it gets heated and it gets funny and it might get a little bit wild and probably might swear a bit as well, is that it all comes from a place of love. And I think that's what we need to have more people doing more of that stuff.
Absolutely. If more people could be like us doing this in the world, it would be a much better place to live.
Yeah.
All right, that's enough, damn it. Let's get on with the show. All right.
Get into it, woman. Come on.
Let's get into it. So I want to talk about zoos. I have been visiting zoos my entire life. I love the zoo. We have Zoo Tampa here where I live, and I am a member, and I love Zoo Tampa. And I am particularly fond of elephants. I love elephants. I either was an elephant, or if I turn into an animal or whatever you call reincarnate, I'm going to be an elephant. That's how it is. I'm the elephant whisperer. Okay? So now, talking about zoos, they're very important. Yeah. I believe they are so important because, number one, they are helping with animals that are extinct in the wild. We can only find them in captivity in zoos. So that's number one. Number two, they help animals survive because of loss to their habitats, probably because human beings are ruining their habitats, okay, as well as other species. But they are losing their habitats due to invasive predators, due to disease, climate change, rises in sea level, and zoos help protect and to keep those animals' numbers going. Also, there are conservation projects, and there's an excellent one that's going on in Papua New Guinea, all right, where the tree kangaroo lives. and it's a rural area. And the villages there depend on the tree kangaroo for their nutrition. That's their meat source, their main meat source. But besides that, they are also hunted, and they are losing their habitats because of deforestation and other meaning terrible ways that man has invaded their habitat. So through zoos, in a cooperation with zoos, they are now introducing a rabbit farming to help them start raising rabbits and introduce them as being the closest nutritional value as were the kangaroos. So they're learning to adapt to the rabbits, and they have also led to enforced legislation where now it is illegal to hunt and kill the tree monkeys. So the zoos actually helped in the conservation of the tree monkey and help it to survive by restoring the numbers, by allowing the villagers to eat rabbits now, and by enforcing laws that help prevent killing them. Isn't that some good stuff? I mean, those are just some of the things.
That's some great stuff. So is this a zoo in Papua New Guinea that have done this, or is this a zoo
it's not in New Guinea. It's actually London, the zoo in London.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Because they would have some of those animals in their zoo in London, right? So they've realised that they're going extinct, so they've gone to their natural habitat to find out what's going on.
Right, and they help them out. I mean, that's some damn good stuff. Now, in the beginning, in the history of zoos, that's not what zoos were hundreds of years ago, okay?
No.
In the beginning, okay, and we could go back thousands of years, animals were taken and held in captivity by the royal ships of the pharaohs and the kings and the queens to show their supreme power, okay, and just to keep them as possessions, okay? And they were known as menageries back then, not zoos, okay? That was not cool, okay, because now we're just taking an animal out of its habitat just to be candy for us to look at, okay, and watch it. That was not cool stuff that was going on at that time. But as we progressed in time, zoos began to realize that it was important, okay, for the survival of a lot of these animals and for humans and animals to understand each other better as an educational tool, okay, especially for children to understand where an animal lives in places where they have their true habitat type of captivity in zoos, and to help them understand them better and respect animals in their habitats. And now it has really grown, and a lot of the zoos have many natural habitats, helping the animals to restore some of their numbers and releasing them back into the wild, so we can help them and survive.
I'd like to pull you up on that.
Go ahead. What do you want to say? Go.
So the majority of animals that are bred in captivity, even if they're an extinct animal or on extinction like tigers and lions and elephants, etc., because they're bred in captivity or they've been in captivity in zoos for so long, very rarely are they able to be reintegrated back out into the wild. So therefore, we're not actually plumping up animals, exotic animals or extinct animals, back in their natural habitat. Fact. Okay,
well, we're not talking about the zoos that are accredited, okay, by the Association for Zoos and Aquariums, okay, because they have very strict guidelines to keep the animals as natural in their habitats as possible. I'm not talking about raising an animal and putting it in my lap so I can hear it purr all day and feed it with a bottle.
This is actually in zoos, because in zoos, no matter how much they try to imitate the natural habitat, it obviously changes the behavior of the animal. Because if you think about an elephant is a migratory animal. So no matter how big an enclosure it has at a zoo, it can't actually migrate, which is part of what it naturally needs to do to fulfill itself and survive. So what they do is the elephants then repress their migration, which then makes them aggressive. So the actual conservation perspective that we are got zoos and that they're there so that we are breeding and going to plump up these numbers for these endangered animals, and then we go and we put them back out into the natural habitat. Well, that's a fabulous idea. It's idealistic, because the reality is that they actually don't have the skills to be able to do that. So the numbers of animals that are able to successfully reintegrate back out into the wild are really, really low.
Well, if we're talking about elephants, okay, there's very few times where a zoo is going to put an elephant back into its natural habitat. Okay, that's not the type of animal that gets put back in.
But you're arguing that that's one of the great points about zoos. It is
because elephants. I'm talking about thousands of species.
It's actually all of the animals, right? So any animal that's actually brought up in a modified environment, when they go to put them back out into the natural habitat, because it's a modified environment, the animals can't cope. So therefore, they cannot put them out there. Any animal that's actually bred in captivity, because they're bred in captivity itself, which is a great idea and it's a great concept, they can't actually readjust and then be reintroduced out into the wild. So we're plumping up numbers within zoos, but we're not plumping up numbers out there in the wild.
I disagree, Bern. That's not true. Of course, there's going to be some animals that might not adapt. No, it's not. There's been plenty of animals here in America. Okay, the California Condor, okay, which is a vulture type of bird, okay, which was on its way to extinction. They rehabilitated and bred the condors and got them in enough numbers and introduced them back into the wild into California, and they are now breeding themselves and reintroducing more condors and larger numbers in California. They're doing just fine. Okay, so if we're just talking about elephants, I haven't done the numbers.
I'm not just talking about elephants.
A zoologist,
I'm talking about tigers. I'm talking about lions. I'm talking about elephants. I'm talking about
animals.
All these animals, right? So how can you go and breed a sea lion in captivity, right, or an orca whale in captivity? Orca whales in captivity live for about 30 years. In the wild, they live for 100. So when you look at that, it doesn't matter how great an environment we try to recreate.
That was hundreds of years ago, Bernie. Not now.
No, it is now.
Because man has dominated and taken away their environment with all the pollution and the garbage that we put in the water because of the climate change, okay, because of the rise of the oceans and sea levels. It is changing the whole environment, the natural environments for species in water and on land. So that is changing the habitat.
You can't tell me that you cannot say that if you were an animal if you were a wild animal, right, and somewhere or other you've been rescued or whatever it is, and you've been taken out of the wild because we're trying to reintroduce you and like rebreed you and plump your numbers up so that you don't go extinct. If we take you out of your natural habitat and put you into something that's an imitation, that would not affect you. As a human being, they do trials like that all of the time. Of course it affects
But Bernie, we could take you if you had a severe car accident and you were in a coma. Okay, you were in a coma for 6 months, and we took you away and we had to bring you over here to America, and you were in a coma for 6 months, and then you came out and we rehabilitated you in a different place and different than what you knew of, and then we let you go. Of course, it's going to be a little different. That doesn't mean you're not going to survive. I mean,
we're talking.
Every animal has the ability to survive based on their basic survival skills. Get into the lizard brain.
But it's about being happy, love. It's about being happy.
Okay. Well, we could be happy.
Are you going to be happy if you're a big animal like an elephant or a lion, a big cat, a monkey, a orangutan, a chimpanzee, where you are used to swinging from tree to tree and migrating from like place to place? Are you going to be happy in an enclosure?
Well, it's not necessarily an enclosure. A lot of them have acres and acres and acres of land that they put them on, where it's extremely like
in zoos they do not have that space.
Yes, they do.
In sanctuaries they might. Over here, they don't. We do not have zoos over here that have got acres and acres and acres of land for orangutans to go and swing from one tree to the other.
You need to see more zoos. I'll tell you that for sure.
No, I'm not going to be seeing more zoos. That's my point.
Well, there's 212 zoos in the United States, okay, that are accredited, okay, by the Association.
Yeah, so they're regulated, right?
They're regulated very well, and they have adapted, like I said, gone from way back from menageries to true zoos with conservation missions, okay, where they want to help animals be in safe places where they can breed them to keep them from extinction, and to also help human beings interact in a way to understand and educate them so they could respect animals in their habitat. So if those animals are released back into the wild, that they will do so safely and continue on with their life. If I was rehabilitating and it was either I died, okay, because I had half my leg eaten off by some other predator, and I was taken by another species and they rehabilitated me and let me go, if it was either that or die back there, I'd rather be rehabilitated. I wouldn't be happy while it was happening, maybe, but I would be so happy and very fortunate and happy when it happened. Wouldn't you?
If that was the situation, obviously, because that's rescuing an animal. I'm not talking about rescuing
animals. Okay, but
animals.
that is a lot of the reasons why we have a zoo.
I'm talking about, like, and I mean, we've got breeding programs in zoos, and I mean, and we've got a great guest on later called Clancy Hall. So Clancy's worked in zoos all around the world for 20 years, right? And she's now studying at uni over here, because a big part of zoos is like breeding and conservation. And so she's doing a study.
Breeding does not have to be a big part of a zoo. That's incorrect. It is part of their program, but it's not a big part of their program. The big part of their program is to keep the animals safe and to treat them humanely and to keep them in the best habitat that they can so that they can live out their lives. Okay? Most of those animals came from being rescued, okay, where people, like you were saying, they're kept by people in their friggin' garages. Okay, and these people think they could just keep exotic animals like lions and cougars and panthers and all this other stuff. They can't. So a zoo is doing that to protect them.
Yeah, well, I mean, zoos in Australia, right, we don't do that. Like in Australia and around the world, breeding and conservation is one of the big marketing tools that zoos use, right? Because they interbreed with each other. So zoos all around the world get connected and they go, okay, like, you know, we need a male lion, XYZ, ABC, and we don't have one because we need to breed said lion because we don't have enough of that in our zoo. So they will ship in a lion from, you know, the US to Copenhagen to Australia, wherever it is. So breeding is absolutely integral to zoos. So Clancy, I think, will get her to talk about that because that's what she's studying at the moment, because breeding and conservation in zoos is so. What you're talking about, though, like, I mean, big cats taken out of people's homes and stuff like that, honest to God, I mean, I don't even understand, if you're an animal lover, why you would even have an animal like that living. So
answer this. If you knew, I agree with you on that. Okay, no one should be having a big animal like that in their home, in their backyard, in their garage, in their basement. So if someone had a panther or a bobcat, okay, and it finally they got taken away from them because they mistreated, didn't know how to raise it. Okay, they didn't understand it was a wild animal. They thought it was going to turn out to be like a nice dog, and they took it to the zoo to live. So it could be rehabilitated and live there.
But see,
you wouldn't agree to that?
Not that. Well, we don't have that in Australia, right? You do not go and take your animal. If you find a wild animal over here, you go and take it to a wildlife sanctuary, which is different to a zoo.
Okay, we can talk about sanctuaries right now.
Right, or you go to,
the question I asked
wildlife
Would you not rather have the zoo have that animal and take good care of it?
What I'm saying to you is the zoos
who had it in their garage?
Yeah, of course, but we don't take them to zoos. We take them to sanctuaries.
Okay, we do too.
So you don't see that animal then put on display because it's been injured or whatever it is. Right? Like, so it doesn't in the zoos.
I got to bring you over here. I got to bring you over here so you could see some of our zoos. It's not what you're thinking. Okay, some of the zoos are smaller because that's the way they were built in the late 1800s, and some of them are the same way. And I'm going to tell you, in New York, in Central Park, okay, you've been in New York, in Central Park, they have the Central Park Zoo, okay?
Yeah.
I think they should either expand that zoo or they should close it down because it's too small. That's a traditional menagerie the way it was hundreds of years ago, and they brought the animals in, and they are more like in cages than in most of our zoos now here in America. Okay, like the San Diego Zoo. Okay, the Zoo Tampa.
But how do we get that message out to people then, Di, right? Like, because you're talking about, I know about that zoo in Central Park, and when I went to New York, I refused to go there to see it, right? So how do we get that message out to people then about being educated about what zoo to go to? Because zoos are businesses just like everything else, right? So people come in and they pay money to see exhibits. And I'm not discrediting zoos. I'm not saying that they're not educational. I'm not saying that everybody that walks through the gate there, you know, wants to bloody go home then and you know, go and get themselves a big cat and sit with it and have breakfast with it at the kitchen table. But what I am saying is how do we get people educated then? So it's a supply-demand issue, because if we had people educated out there and they chose not to go to petting zoos, roadside zoos, animals like, you know, that are being kept in cages like in Central Park, how do they know which zoos to go to so that they're supporting something that's supporting these animals?
Okay, well, people, you know, have to take an interest in looking on the internet. It's very easy to look out online and find out what the best zoos in America.
Yeah, but I think even then,
I want to show you a picture. Okay, let's take a look at number one, John. This is going to be the Dorley Zoo, the Henry Dorley Zoo. This is in Nebraska. Okay, Omaha, Nebraska. This zoo is 125 years old, and it has been progressing and progressing. And that big dome that you see, that represents an artificial desert, so it could help the animals feel like they're in their natural habitat in a desert. And actually, part of that dome has some animals from Queensland. Okay, to help.
What have they got there from Queenslander?
They do. But anyway,
but what's in there from Queensland?
I'll give you the specifics later. God, we can't waste any more time, I'll tell you. But that zoo has been open for 125 years. It has over 130 acres with natural habitats for many of the large cats and the elephants, the giraffes, the rhinos, and animals that we were just talking about before, to make it the most natural habitat they can for the animals. Okay, people aren't allowed to touch the animals. They're not even in the way of the animals. They're roaming across acres. Okay, and their mission is for conservation, research animals, help educate and research animals, and help all of that so that people will understand what a zoo's purpose and mission should be today. Unlike the smaller zoos, okay, where they are placing them in those cages, okay, and they literally are there for a freak show. It's not like that now in many of the zoos, the bigger zoos in America. They have really progressed and understand now it's to take care of those animals, to rehabilitate them, and help keep those animals from extinction. So it's very different.
Do they have animals performing there?
No, not at all.
Do they have animals performing?
They do have a petting zoo, but it's for domesticated animals. You could go in and pet the goats. Okay, and I don't know, they might have a pig in there or something. It's domesticated animal. It's not, they don't have tigers and things like that.
What about like, you know, big zoos like SeaWorld? Like,
well, SeaWorld, first of all, is an aquarium. That's an aquarium. That's not a zoo. So we differentiate our aquariums and our zoos. Okay? Number one.
So you've got polar bears at SeaWorld though, right?
Right, but it's still considered an aquarium. They even have penguins.
Well, that's just like apples and oranges. But anyway,
the majority of the species are aquatic. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still all under the regulation of the associations for zoos and aquariums. Strict regulations.
Yeah, so
they do not have, now they have cut out the orca, the killer whale shows. Okay, because there was several times, they're wild animals, and they were performing the shows, and several of the keepers got killed during the show.
Oh, my God.
So they eliminated now the orca shows, the killer whale shows. But let's get on a quick, good subject.
That's on the back of that movie Blackfish too.
Yeah.
But see, over here we've got SeaWorld, right? So we've got polar bears and penguins and sea lions and everything here on the Gold Coast at SeaWorld, and they all do performing tricks.
Okay, well, they do have in our SeaWorld, I think the sea lions or the walruses do tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, same and the dolphins, I think, still do tricks.
Yeah.
Okay, but a majority of them have been taking away the killer whale shows because of the understanding that it's a wild animal and it's a killer instinct. That's a killer whale, right? But let's jump to sanctuaries because I am very fond of sanctuaries, and here they are under the strict regulations of the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. And the purpose of a sanctuary is where animals are brought so they can live out their lives in peace and be protected, okay, for the rest of their lives in a natural habitat. And one of my favorite ones that I haven't been to yet, but I will be going because it's not really that far from me, is a place in Tennessee, and it's called the Elephant Sanctuary. I told you I love elephants. So
I want to go there too because I love Tennessee.
All right, well, we'll have to go. When you come over, we'll go.
Yeah,
right, when you
we
come.
will.
All right.
Oh,
all right.
Look.
Yeah. So listen, this is Tara, and she was the first elephant that Carol Buckley, she's the one that started the sanctuary. She had been working with Tara for over a decade. She was hired as her keeper because it was some idiot, okay, who bought her just to have her as a personal pet. And Carol was her keeper, and she couldn't take it anymore. So finally, the guy didn't want her anymore, and he took her, and she went immediately to find land where Tara could run and be free and natural, and she could take care of her for the rest of her life. So she started the Elephant Sanctuary here in Tennessee. It has over 900 acres, and she has 11 elephants there. And when an elephant comes in, because they were from a zoo, from a of old age, or they didn't get along with other elephants, or it was from a circus, or it was hunted and injured, she takes them and keeps them individually isolated so that they are taken care of, whatever needs they have, and then is slowly integrated into the area where all the elephants can be together. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a wonderful, absolutely wonderful place. And a lot of the sanctuaries in the United States are like that are governed by them. So are you okay with sanctuaries?
I love sanctuaries, but I mean, the ultimate I was talking to Clancy about this yesterday afternoon. Like, the ideal would be the best way for humans to experience animals is to see them in their natural habitat. So to have sanctuaries for these endangered species or orphan species or animals that have been rejected by zoos or humans or whatever it is to have see these animals in their natural habitat, which obviously means that we're going to take up a lot of land and a lot of money. And I think for that to happen, we need to have a lot of education and discussions like this so that we can be educated. And as people go, you know what, well, I'm going to put my money into this, because I would much rather see an animal acting in its natural habitat than go to SeaWorld and see a dolphin jump through hoops or a lion do whatever it is. Even Steve Irwin, like the Australian Zoo, I do not agree with animals that have been trained to do something for entertainment so that I can, think, that's cute and that's funny. I think that's bullshit.
Well, I'm going to leave you with this picture, and then we're going to bring our guests. So let's look at the number 3, and then I'm going to leave you with this, Bernie. Here's our last picture. All right, we need to stop saying zoos are bad, okay? Because
forgotten they can't return due to...
Yeah, it's because their habitats are being destroyed by poaching and hunting and disease and disasters.
Who's the biggest predator? Is human beings.
Humans, of course they are.
We've got to have a good, long, hard look at ourselves, love.
We need a hard look at ourselves, and we need to protect the animals in any way that we can. And as long as the animals are living in a safe, healthy, and loving environment, I'm all for it.
I know, but I mean, we've run out of time, as we always bloody do, because I've got so many. I know, so many points to go on there. I mean, just going back to, I read a stat that in the US, there are more exotic animals in captivity in domesticated situations, so in people's garages, backyards, kitchens, etc., than what there are in actual zoos.
Oh, that's insane.
Isn't that insane? Like, so these people have got these wild animals, bringing them up in these domesticated situations, and we've got more numbers of that than we've actually got animals in zoos in the US.
Well, we need to work on that. Well, you got a guest for us coming on, right?
I do. This is the lovely Clancy Hall, and Clancy and I have never actually met. We've just been speaking with each other, like, over the phone. So Clancy has worked in zoos for like over 20 years all around the world. And hey, Clancy.
Hey, Bernadette, morning.
Hi, Clancy. This is Di, my feisty co-host from bloody Florida.
Hi, Clancy.
I'm not sure if you've been listening to the show, but it's been a bit fiery going on here.
Oh, I was probably asleep for some of it, but I'm up now. I've had my coffee. It's all good.
Oh, no, bless you. Thanks for getting up so early too. But Clancy lives in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, for all of you people that are listening from around America and around Australia. And so Clancy's worked in zoos for over 20 years all around the world. She's a passionate conservationist. She's done some work with, the King of Conservation, David Attenborough, in her career. And she's currently studying, we're talking about that breeding and conservation stuff before, Clancy, about the importance of zoos. So, I guess, what do you think about, Di and I were just talking then about the difference between zoos and sanctuaries. So what do you think about the difference between zoos and sanctuaries? Like, what is the difference really, and is there a difference?
Yeah, I think sometimes it just comes down to semantics, really. Usually a sanctuary is possibly smaller than a zoo, but fundamentally they're the same thing.
Isn't that interesting? Because I always my perception of sanctuaries is that they're much bigger, right? Like, so there's a bigger space, so the animals go there. Is that the same for you, Di?
Yeah, I mean, this elephant sanctuary is over 900 acres.
Well, true. Maybe smaller in budget.
Okay. Yeah. Because is that because like they don't get funded then? Like they're not normally, zoos are funded by, I know they get funded by people walking through their gates, but do zoos get, I don't know, federal funding, government funding?
Yeah, look, some zoos do, but I think it all comes down to the individual zoo or sanctuary. Like I was saying, they're pretty much the same thing in Australia. Some zoos, like Currumbin Sanctuary, for example, or Western Plains Zoo. If you're thinking about what's a sanctuary, Western Plains is big. The animals have got a lot of room to move around. Currumbin Sanctuary, does have some large paddocks, but essentially it behaves much more like a zoo. So I think it's just semantics.
So you've worked in zoos, right? So you've got the behind the scenes info. I mean, we're just talking like about stuff that we see externally from the outside looking in. What really happens inside zoos? And are they a great thing?
I don't work in a zoo now, so I feel quite free to say what I please. After 20 odd years in working and visiting lots of zoos, I'm very comfortable that good zoos do an excellent job. There's the few, shitty little zoos that give them a bad name. I'm very comfortable with how zoos behave in America and in Australia. The good zoos that are registered, in Australia we have the Zoo Aquarium Association, so that's the sort of governing body, if you will, and they will assess a zoo every second year, and in that in-between year, the zoos assess themselves. So I think that they're quite highly regulated, and, you can't hide anything anymore. That with so many, people visiting and with social media, everyone's got a camera phone, and it's such a passionate industry that the keepers themselves, if somebody's doing the wrong thing, Holy dooly, they'll be out the door before they, get to Smoko. Yeah, I think
so
that unfortunately...
What do you think about... What do you think then about this? Like, so the AustralianAnimals.org, right, like on their website, so they've done an article just in, I think, April this year, and they're talking about the 4 myths of zoos, right? So they're saying that myth number 1 is that zoos exist for conservation. So they disagree with that. They say that they don't. They say that zoos... the myth number 2 is that zoos are the best way to learn about animals, so education they dismiss. They say that zoos are a normal part of society where they shouldn't be, and they say that animals in zoos are happy.
All right, well, let's take these one by one. What was the first one?
Yeah.
I did just wake up.
The first one is that zoos exist for conservation, so their perspective is that they don't. Like that, it's not about conservation; it's about money.
Well, we can probably take this one with the zoos just exist for society, was it, or for the general public to, I guess, use as a spectacle. Well, that's how they started. Zoos started as a menagerie. Humans love to look at things, and of course, to keep them there, you need to put them in a cage. But zoos, it's like constantly evolving, and so what zoos are now are remarkably different to, the menageries of, even sort of 50 years ago. Very, very different. And, they're held accountable to be different and to not sort of abuse the 5 freedoms, or in the zoos, it's the 5 domains, because we take mental health into account as well. So I think the perception, zoos have changed, but the perception is still a bit slow to catch up. What was the next one?
Just talking about mental health, though, like of animals in the zoos, right? So that's one of the things that they're saying is about the ethics of holding wild animals in captivity and about how it affects the mental health of the animals. And that they stated, too, that a lot of animals are actually on antidepressants.
Oh, look, I don't know of any animals... Well, I've certainly never worked with an animal on antidepressants. Perhaps it is used in some cases with, say, primates, or the sort of, I hate to use the term higher order, but you know what I'm talking about, like the primates and more cognitive species, perhaps. But there's so much emphasis on enrichment and keeping animals. Even, I did catch you speaking before about the animal shows and SeaWorld, and very rightly bring that up and have a good chat about it, because sometimes that's very questionable. But a lot of these shows, like, the animals love it. I just went to my local zoo recently for my daughter's birthday, and I was talking about, they've been shut for some time. How are the animals going? Are they, are they a bit spooked now that there's so many people all of a sudden again visiting? And this lady had a couple of macaws, flying them in an aviary. And she said, oh, no, they're so happy to see people. So a lot of the animals in the shows, now I hate to be anthropomorphic, because that's how zoos get into trouble as people, attributing human feelings and characteristics onto animals that may or may not feel the same way, right? But a lot of these animals in the shows, like, they think they're pretty good, they love that interaction.
Are you saying they're egomaniacs?
Something that humans are a little bit shut off to is this energy that's created by a crowd, and I'm sure you've felt it. You're in an environment and everyone's cheering, and there's that really positive, beautiful energy. Well, animals, I think, are very perceptive to energy, I think they find that quite positive. Now I'm speaking generally. I'm sure there's exceptions, as there always are.
Well, during this time, Clancy, with the coronavirus, having people come in and pay for tickets is a huge part of how they get their money to help feed and take care of the animals. So has many of the zoos really been affected by not receiving the money from the public coming into the zoos? And has donations been enough to help take care of the animals and the staff that takes care of the animals during this time?
Yeah, look, I think zoos have been hit really hard by this. The federal government in Australia, I think that, look, I don't know the figure, but many millions of dollars were given to the zoo industry to be distributed to zoos that are having trouble. That's unfortunately, zoos have to run as a business to survive. Another reason why they do have shows to attract people, they need that sort of, humans need that encouragement sometimes to come to these places. I think we'll see a lot of the smaller zoos possibly even close due to coronavirus.
So what happens to the animals in that situation then?
The animals would just be distributed throughout the zoo industry. Yeah.
That's good. I like that. They would be transported to a different zoo where they'd be given a home Absolutely. And taken care of again. Yeah. Okay.
So you go, Di.
So in regards to a lot of the smaller zoos, like I was talking about Central Park Zoo in New York and how it was, in the late 1800s and how the cages and the buildings are still the way they were back then, extremely small. Why are they still allowed and licensed to operate as a zoo as opposed to some of the other bigger zoos that allow for more natural habitats? Why are they still allowing the smaller zoos to operate when it is more like a menagerie where people are literally gawking at the animals in the cages instead of the other type of zoos that have been progressing and caring more about their natural habitats and allowing the animals to live and grow naturally?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. And I haven't been to Central Park Zoo, but I understand with these smaller metro zoos, that's a really good argument to be having. And like I was saying before, with the evolution of zoos, perhaps this is sort of the next step into bringing that into something that people are more comfortable with. I don't want to say better ethics because it's, once again, being anthropomorphic and whether these animals... I have no doubt that the animals at Central Park Zoo are looked after.
Yes, absolutely they are.
Yes. And we've got the same thing in Australia, that some of these old buildings are then covered by historical, they're historical buildings, so you can't knock them down. But that sort of, I guess, encourages a question, can you repurpose them? Can you use them for something else? Mm-hmm. So, perhaps giraffes shouldn't be held in a... building where the entryway is to, they've got to dip their head in to get into the building. Should giraffes go to the zoo that's 100k out of the city, and we keep smaller animals in a metro zoo? It's a really valid discussion.
Yeah.
Do we have like a governing body, like in the zoo world? Is there a governing body that actually overlooks what's happening on all of these regulated, unregulated zoos around the world? Like who's going to bring about these changes?
There's a World Zoo and Aquarium Association, and then within each region, like Australasia has its own region, the United States, Europe, the Americas, the South America has its own zoo region, and all of them have a governing body that would assess and regulate the registered zoos.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that this is a really, really intense topic, but when we're talking about population control in zoos, and there's a lot of information out there about actually euthanizing healthy animals because of breeding purposes or it doesn't suit what's going on. I mean, in 2019 in the Wellington Zoo in New Zealand, they killed 4 healthy baboons, and that was due to, they said, the head of the zoo said that it was because the exhibit had become untenable. So, I mean, who's regulating these kinds of practices in zoos if it's coming down to a business decision and we're euthanizing healthy animals? because of breeding purposes.
I'd argue that it's never just a business decision. To euthanize an animal would be the extreme last resort for any zoo or sanctuary. I don't know the situation with the baboons, so I probably shouldn't speak to that because I don't know what the reasons were behind it. But no doubt it had to do, with the size of the enclosure, also with the genetics of the population. As you can appreciate, you can't just keep breeding from the one group of animals. You need to move animals in and out, and that movement's not only within those regions, but animals are moved all over the world to keep the genetics of a population healthy. So that's really sort of the main impetus, I would say, for taking that step and euthanizing an animal. I mean, you look at where was it, Denmark? That was a really big one where they euthanized a young male giraffe.
Oh my God, that was Marius.
Sorry?
Marius, that was his name. 18-month-old giraffe.
Yeah, that's right. And, they fed it to the lions, which, people might think, oh my God, they did what? But when you just take emotion out of that and look at this situation really objectively, so they can't say, right, you female, you need to produce a girl. We need a daughter from you to keep this population healthy. I mean, we're talking about giraffes in Europe. So how many giraffes can fit into all the sanctuaries in Europe? Just a very small number. But you still need to breed, of course, to keep the population going. So they've produced an excess male. You can't keep heaps of males together. They fight, and that leads to ethical problems as well. So you've got a male giraffe, bummer. We really needed a female. What do? You can't just keep it there. You can't send it to someone else because they don't have room either. So that next step, looking objectively, it is a realistic option. They fed it to the lions. Wow, that's shocking. But that's probably the most natural meal those lions have ever had in their lives. They dissected it in front of a crowd.
I think the word euthanize gives us a false sense of security because they shot it in front of onlookers and then they dissected in front of onlookers and then they fed it to the lions.
Yeah, the euthanasia part is confusing. I don't know why they shot it. Perhaps with giraffe, using lethobarb, or it takes too long, or it's a distressing death. Maybe a shot in the head, like they did, really was the most ethical and the fastest method of. I'm sure that would have been talked about in the vet department before they did it. So my guess is that it just simply was the fastest way to do it. And dissecting it in front of a crowd, including kids. Yeah, you might think, holy dooly, that's really that's a really significant thing to do. But it's an education. They've then turned this into a big education opportunity. I know myself. I've actually dissected roadkill with my 4-year-old daughter just to show her where all the organs are. And I think she's better for it. She was really interested. Where's the heart? Where's the lungs? Where does your food go? We traced it from the mouth right down to its bum, These opportunities, although they may seem unconventional, I think are very real and I dare say natural for humans.
I agree with you, Clancy. I mean, if we just take the way that humans live, we go into the supermarket to buy our food and our meat, and we look at beautiful chicken that's been all cut up beautiful and beautiful red meat and trimmed of fat and trimmed of that, and we just purchase it. If any of these children wouldn't have any idea where it came from or how the process happened. Okay, so to have a situation where it's an education to know in the wild and to respect an animal in the wild and know that that's what animals do. They're carnivorous and they will attack and they eat, and that's how they survive, by eating another animal. I think it was a great education. I don't know any of the facts, so I'm not going to speak about that. But I think it's important for all people to understand and respect animals and wildlife and their habitats and how they live. And if we didn't have the convenience of having food like this in our supermarket, we would have to be doing the same thing too, whether we're out there and growing and grazing our own food or shooting birds and fowls to survive ourselves. So it is an important education to learn respect, which has been so lost, okay, in society all over the world. So I don't know all the facts about that, but I am sure that the zoo did the best that they could in the circumstance. And it's a terrible tragedy, but in the end, they did what was natural in their world. So.
Yeah, and another thing with how zoos are managed as well, one could argue that it's more ethical to allow those animals to enjoy all the, I don't know whether they enjoy it, but go through all of those breeding behaviours. Other regions like Australia would be more inclined to use contraception, same with the USA. All the females would be on contraception. So I know European zoos, it's more the case that they would use this method. So allow them to mate and to court and to give birth and to raise young and go through those natural animal behaviours.
So how do we stop that though? Because I got to say to you, I think the idea of, because we have created a situation where we've got zoos that people need to be entertained, and we've let people, animals naturally mate, and now we've got too many males, too many females, so let's just pop them in the head and dissect them for education and feed it to the lions because we happen to have some next door, is absolutely horrific. I think it's absolutely fucking awful. So how do we stop this? Because again, it's the human chain, and our need for more and more and more and more that have got animals in this situation in the first place. So how do we stop that from happening then? Because I think that's what you're kind of studying at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and Bernadette, I agree with you. It doesn't always, even when I was in the zoo industry, it didn't always sit well with me, this idea of, what do they call it, edutainment. And that, zoos have to be a business. It really sucks that zoos have to be a business, but it's got humans involved, so it's always going to suck a little bit. Humans are terrible animals. We've buggered up the earth, and I wish that zoos didn't have to. I wish that we could get rid of all the zoos, just put money into keeping the habitat safe and healthy.
Yeah, like getting animals and a habitat. I was saying to Di before about I think the most education that you can have about an animal is seeing it in its natural habitat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but absolutely.
How do we get to that stage?
Yeah, to see something in its natural habitat, is amazing. But we can't, because we keep chopping down the trees, we keep encroaching into their habitat, and unfortunately, zoos have saved multiple species from extinction. And the one benefit of humans wanting to keep things in cages for hundreds of years is that zoos have experience in looking after animals. And if you've suddenly got, a mountain pygmy possum, okay, so they're going, possibly, going to carcass because of climate change. So what are you going to do? They might only end up in captivity, worst case scenario, of course. Right. But we've been keeping them. We know how to look after them, so that will be done well. We won't be making mistakes with really critically important individuals.
Do you think too that, obviously we've had these massive bushfires over here, like towards the end of last year, Clancy, and which wiped out or has completely decimated. We had what did we lose? Something over 500,000 animals and species.
Closer to 1 billion, they estimate.
How many? Right, how many was it?
Closer to 1 billion animals were affected.
Yeah. So we've got this natural disaster that's happened too, where we've got these massive bushfires, which honestly I've not seen bushfires like that in my lifetime in Australia. And all of these poor animals decimate. Our koala population, for instance, is, which was in trouble prior to all of this. So I agree with you. We definitely need zoos. We need sanctuaries. I just think that, we need to change how we're doing it. We need to change what education really is. And it really distresses me to see or hear that we've got these breeding programs that are happening in zoos, and if we've got too many males or too many females or whatever it is, that we've got to do something with those excess animals. So is that what you're kind of studying at the moment, is how we can avoid that?
Look, Bernadette, I don't think we can. I think that we just need to concentrate on the outcome, and the outcome is keeping these populations genetically healthy. And unfortunately, that's going to cost a few on the side. But I think the benefits far outweigh, that sad side. What that's happening.
Well, Clancy, I can't thank you enough for coming onto our show. You've been a total crazy amount of information for us that helped Bernadette and I understand more what's going on out in the zoo and sanctuary and private industry of wild animals. And I congratulate you and thank you for dedicating your life to animals and what you do for them. We need so many more people like you. Thank you so much, and we'd love to have you on again sometime.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's been fun. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Clancy. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
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 Well, what a crazy show.
As always, we're like a minute and 32.
We've
not done any funny stuff today. Oh, my God. That went so quick. How cool was she?
Wonderful lady. What a wonderful lady, dedicating her life to animals. I love that. I don't think I've ever told you this, but when I retire, I don't know when the hell that'll be, but I already told my family I'm going to take a job and volunteer and take care of elephants.
Oh, I think that'd be amazing. I mean, I always tell Sean, we've got 4 acres here. I always tell Sean, he's going to come home one day and, the whole joint's just going to be full of animals, right?
I love it. That's what we're going to do.
I really love the idea of looking after, aged animals that, nobody wants anymore.
There you go. I love that, Bern. Listen, if you have any comments
we better spin the wheel, love.
Well, we got to forget the wheel. We're never going to make it, but maybe we'll give them a Facebook Live on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we'll do it.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody for watching. If you have any comments, whether you're for zoos or against zoos and things like that, please let us know. Send us the information to talk@rsvppodcast.com. We want to thank you so much for watching. Please come back and watch us every Friday live at 4:30 p.m. All right, or you'll be able to catch us on the podcast. So thanks a lot again, love. It was wonderful, and I think we did a great debate.
Ciao, Bella.
Welcome to R.S.V.P. Listen to the show at your own risk. We will be discussing all taboo subjects like religion, sex, violence, and even politics. You should be ready for controversy, disagreements, face-offs, and maybe some downright rumbles. Well, sit tight and get ready for this week's episode. And by the way, if you're squeamish about obscenities, don't listen to our fucking show!